It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Todd R. Irwin, DMD, Dr. Bracken Killpack, and Dr. Dennis Bradshaw. This whole podcast is about what everybody's talking about, the Washington State Dental Association lawsuit with Delta Dental. Let me just introduce everybody. The most handsome guy you're seeing is the other bald guy, Dr. Todd R. Irwin, DMD of Irwin Dental Center, who's the president-elect of the Washington State Dental. He's a Pacific Northwestern native. After attending college at University of Utah for undergraduate studies and University of Louisville Dental School in Kentucky, he returned to Washington State to be closer to family and friends. He is passionate about dentistry and is known to use vacation time to further in dental education by either taking courses or reading dental material. Dr. Irwin and his wife have 5 children. When he isn't working, he enjoys playing golf, basketball, cycling, spending time with family and friends, and traveling. Bracken Killpack, wave Bracken so they can see you, has been the executive director of the Washington State Dental Association since January 2015. Prior to that, he ran WSDA's Government Affairs program. Bracken has an MBA from the University of Washington's Foster School of Business and a BA in politics from Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. Bracken and his wife, Kate, were volunteers with the United States Peace Corps in Panama from 2009 to 2011. And then last but not least is Dr. Dennis L. Bradshaw of Dennis Bradshaw Dentistry. He is the president-elect of the Washington State Dental Association. He received his dental training at Loma Linda University, graduating in '86. He returned to Tri-Cities and joined his father, Robert, in their Pasco dental office, where they worked together till early 2010. Dennis and his wife, Traci, have 2 grown children and love being together with family for holidays. Dr. Bradshaw enjoys keeping up to date with the ever-changing and advancing field of dentistry. This commitment puts him in advanced classes many days a year, helping his patients enjoy his dental office. Gentlemen, what was going on in your life where you decided to launch a lawsuit against Delta Dental? Did you make a wrong turn at an intersection?
No, we made the right turn at an intersection, Howard. The lawsuit was just the latest attempt to try and bring Delta Dental back to focusing on patient care and improve its accountability to the member dentists here in Washington. Delta's policies continue to interfere with the doctor-patient relationship time and time again, and the company keeps interjecting what they want for the patient as opposed to what the patient needs and what the patient and their dentist have found out as they work together one-on-one, and that's just not right. We tried to work through Delta's original established channels, their bylaws, so that we could work to move the actions back more towards patient-centered. But even with the overwhelming support from the member dentists, their board of directors vetoed all of the changes essentially that had any significance that we've made so far. They've also not held their annual meeting, which not only is required by the bylaws of Delta Dental, but it's also required by the state law of Washington. So just cutting down another avenue for member dentists to give input to Delta Dental. So we believe that Delta's actions are illegal, and that this lawsuit is essentially just an effort to force Delta to follow the rules, their own rules, so that the members can bring things back to center.
So can you summarize in general what the lawsuit is about?
You bet. And thanks again for having us, Howard. And I do want to make one little correction, and I'm very happy to make this correction. Actually, Denny is the president-elect, and I'm a nobody. So
I was trying to pad your resume. I was trying to pad it.
I appreciate that. Very nice of you.
Maybe in a few years. How's that?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I've got a lawsuit on my hands to deal with first. Now, so why we filed this lawsuit basically was that we were out of options, to be honest. I think that, as Danny said, we tried everything we could to work with Delta, and once we weren't able to work with Delta, then we tried to use the things that were in place in the bylaws, because this was a company started by the dentists of Washington back in the 50s. So there were things in the bylaws that allowed us some governance of the association. the company. So once we really exhausted all those, and the whole time Delta acted like, they didn't know what we were talking about. And finally, we just, after calling 2 special meetings and having over 90% of the members that were there voted for these amendments that were aimed at transparency and they were aimed at accountability. We finally said, okay, I guess the only option we have is to find ourselves in court, unfortunately. And it feels a little bit like that saying, I don't know if you've ever heard this. It's something my wife says, and she probably is talking about me when she says it, but you can't wake up someone who's only pretending to be asleep. And so when we're trying to deal with Delta, it felt like they were pretending there wasn't a problem. And finally, it was to a point where we had to do this. We had to just decide to find ourselves in court.
One of the things that's confusing to me, and I assume it's confusing to many dentists, is that Delta's a non-profit. But I mean, if you just Google Delta executive pay, the first thing that comes up is that eight Delta dental CEOs make over $1 million a year in compensation. So how do you have a non-profit $1 million compensations? I mean, it just sounds confusing to a young dentist coming out of school that the guy running the nonprofit makes $1 million a year while they're telling you.
Sure. Multi-millions, not 1 million.
Yeah, and actually, I'll give you some data on that, Howard. This is Bracken. We do have annual reports that Delta Dental of Washington, also they used to be known as Washington Dental Service, so we might switch back and forth between those two names. They have to do annual reports every year, and they have to disclose compensation of their board members and their CEO and other top employees. And in 2013, Delta Dental's CEO was compensated $1.26 million. Fast forward to 2017, which is the year we have the most recent data available for, it was $2.6 million. So you can see that there's been a significant increase in the compensation that Delta employees at the top have had over that course of time. And the other top employees have a similar trajectory that I just laid out that was in place for the CEO. You're right that Delta is technically a nonprofit organization. And how the nonprofit laws work in our country is that in return for not or being exempted from paying certain taxes, the organization is supposed to provide a social benefit. And I think that there's concerns that many have raised over the years about what exactly is the social benefit that this organization is providing. And the compensation is concerning. I would say that especially the trend lines that we're seeing over the last several years, it is particularly concerning.
Well, a lot of people have asked me if I'm like anti-DSO or anti-PPO or anti-Delta. I always tell them, I had 4 children and they've made me 5 grandchildren. I just tell them I'm pro-grandchildren. And to me, I think the decisions in a dental office should be made by a dentist. Do you think the decisions in a nonprofit dental insurance company should be made by dentists? Aren't some of the greatest companies, like Henry Ford was an engineer, Hewlett Packard, Dave and Packard, they were both electrical engineers. Don't you think these things should be guided by a dentist? Or as opposed to an MBA? Not knocking your MBA. I have one too, Bracken. Congratulations on getting your MBA. But I don't want my grandchildren, I don't want to pass on and have my grandchildren be taken care of at a dental office that's not owned or guided by a dentist.
We feel really strongly in Washington that that's the way it should be. Our laws in Washington say that no one can own a dental office unless you have a dental degree. And we have fought that tooth and nail in the legislature to keep it that way. Should Delta Dental be run by a dentist? There's several words I'd like to use right now that our attorney said I couldn't use on this call today.
Did you tell him it's Dentistry Uncensored? You can say anything you want.
Well, I think the thing that we're concerned about is, as I believe Todd brought up earlier, Washington Dental Service was founded in the 50s as a partnership with dentists and a dental benefits carrier to improve oral health for the citizens of Washington. And over the course of time, over many decades, the dentist's voice in that company has been diminished, has been minimized, and has been replaced by channels that are completely controlled by the Washington Dental Service Board of Directors and its key management. So in the past, where you would have had elections to the Board of Directors for the dentist members, selected by the dentist, which is one of the things we're trying to do with this lawsuit. Instead, they're handpicked by the Nomination and Governance Committee that is completely controlled by the Board of Directors of WDS. And so I think that the key to what we're trying to do here is we're trying to bring the role that the member dentists of Washington Dental Service, Delta Dental of Washington have, they can be put back into the forefront of the discussion. We're working to change the culture at the top of the organization by holding them more accountable to their member dentists. And so ultimately, from a governance perspective, in my mind, the Board of Directors is ultimately charged with selecting who the CEO is. They need to look at the situation on the ground. They need to look at their strategies and what they're going for, and they need to find an executive that matches that. And so I think that it certainly could be a dentist. It's ultimately a decision for the Board of Directors, and we think that the WDS member dentist should have a say in who those member dentists are that serve on the Board of Directors.
So Howard,
yeah.
I was just going to say that the makeup is currently 6 independent directors that have a majority, obviously, and 4 dental directors. And so one of our bylaws amendments that we had were to, we want to be able to say who those 4 are. Right now, they just select 4 people, and it doesn't seem that those people that they've selected from the dental community have the patient's best interests in mind. Otherwise, there would be some answering for the way that the direction it's gone. I think does that?
Well, it seems like when I got out of dental kindergarten in '87, it seemed like the board, the main dentists at the Arizona State Dental Association were also the main dentists on Delta Dental of Arizona. And now, 3 decades later, that seems to have drifted apart. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah, there was a trustee kind of position that we used to have that was kind of elected out of our tripartite. They weren't actually related, but it seemed like if you were involved in one, you also kind of gravitated towards being on the Delta trustee board. And at some point, 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more, we saw some kind of switch in their governance. And I think most of us just we were complacent, to be honest. I mean, we were just doing our work. We take care of our patients. That's what we're programmed to do. And so as that change happened, someone must have gotten wind that there was some money to be made if they just ran it like a corporation. And what we saw was the goalposts continually moving towards a much more profit-centered, less patient-driven organization. So yeah, that's the way it used to be.
And I get so frustrated when dentists on Dental Town are saying that they're not going to be a member of the ADA because of some thing. It's like, dude, the ADA is your parents. They are fighting at federal and state legislations all day long to save your profession. And when you say you don't like them because they did something like that, well, you could say the same about your parents. You might not agree with everything your mom and dad told you, but it's your only mom and dad. I mean, the reason I've been a due-paying member my entire career and in dental school is because these dentists that are sitting there doing dentistry all day trying to take care of their patients, they don't realize all the wars going on between all the different interests. And like you said, just something simple like you have to be a dentist to own a dental office. I mean, that should just be a no-brainer. But that's not a no-brainer. That's a fight going on in all 50 states. I sometimes I wonder if Delta Dental should even be a nonprofit. They say ultimately lawsuits are usually about money. My dad used to always say, money's the answer. What's the question? Remember in Watergate, they kept saying, just follow the money. Follow the money. Is this lawsuit ultimately about money?
It's not. we're asking for injunctive relief. We're asking for a court to acknowledge and force Delta to actually just play by the rules that were already established, and stop moving the goalposts for us, so we can actually have this set of rules that should mean something. These bylaws, and if we can just get them to follow the bylaws, then we can work within those rules. I mean, I grew up in this country thinking that if you don't like the system, work within the system and change it. That's how we were all raised. That's our civic responsibility. But when the powers that be actually ignore your proper attempt to change the things you don't like about it, then there's a big problem there. That's why we're asking for free and open elections of our dental directors. I mean, it's pretty much an American value that we're asking for at this point.
You know, I always tell my boys, you know, when they complain about something, I always say, you know, anybody can blow up a bridge, but it takes a hell of a person to design and build a bridge. So that person over there designed and built a bridge. If you don't like it, well, go design and build a better bridge. But just don't sit there and throw rocks and snowballs at some bridge that you didn't even build. So what proposals have you, what changes have you proposed to Delta where they were rejected?
Yeah, sure. So I think the other thing I'd just point out is we've attempted to work within the confines of the governance documents for 2 years now, and we did 2 different rounds of bylaws amendments with calling special meetings of the members of WDS. And these bylaws amendments all got over 90% of the vote of those that participated. A couple of things that we worked to get done that were approved but were vetoed by the WDS board independent directors. One was for a loss ratio, which is something that's often discussed in dental benefits these days. For many years, WDS claimed in communications to its members that 94% of premium revenue went towards patient care. So in one of the vetoed bylaws amendments, we recommended that that they implement a 94% loss ratio, so that they put their money where their mouth is, and that if the premium revenue, less than 94% of it was spent on patient care, then the policyholders would be refunded that amount so that it would go up to 94%. This is something that's done in medical now, that only there's a cap on what can be spent on an administrative expense. And we think that there should be something similar at WDS, especially since that they've claimed for many years that they operated at 6% operating expense, essentially, because they had 94% of their premium revenue going to patient care. That was vetoed. Another one that was vetoed was they wanted to limit transparency in how provider input is taken and considered by the leadership of the organization. For many years, they had a member advisory panel, and they do, and to some extent now, although they did remove it from their bylaws without telling the member dentists. They also require those members to fill out a non-disclosure agreement. So in many cases, we don't exactly know what's being discussed with those member advisory panels. One of the bylaws amendments we put forward was that the member advisory panel could provide recommendations to the WDS board of directors about claims and other issues, and that those recommendations would be required to have a up or down vote by the board of directors, and that vote would be public to the membership of WDS. That was vetoed. Another one that's an important patient protection is what's called an independent review board. Once again, this is something that's done in medical benefits, but Delta has been successful in exempting dental benefits carriers, and that themselves included, from having to follow these laws in Washington that medical has to follow. What all an independent review board is it's a neutral third-party arbitrator that you can go to if you've gone through the claims appeal process. So either a provider, a patient, or both. If Delta, says, no, we're not going to pay this, if there was an independent review board, there would be a neutral third party, and in our state, it's our insurance regulator, our insurance commissioner's office, that would serve as a mediator to resolve the issue. And so it prevents the carrier from being the judge and the jury entirely on claims decisions. Another common sense patient protection that exists in Washington but doesn't exist for dental benefits. We already sort of talked about the board compensation. We did have an amendment to put a reduction in that. Board compensation overall has increased 125% from 2013 to 2017. The total expenditure for board compensation outside of the CEO was $560,000 in 2013, and that jumped to $1.23 million 5 years later, 2017, for the most recent data we have available.
So let me just kind of give you an example of what that is. That is a board member who has a career and has maybe 8 or 10 meetings a year. In 2013 was making $40,000 a year for that time, that 8 or 10 meetings, day-long meetings. As of last year, the chair of the board, again, 8 or 10 meetings, made $167,000 for their time on the board. That's more than many of our dentists make in a whole year. And so that to me is excessive.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Brad.
No, and I was just going to say the last thing is, even in some cases where we were able to get some bylaws amendments passed without a veto, even there they aren't following the bylaws. One of them required WDS in their annual report that they share to provide detailed financials of all of their affiliated entities. And that was adopted. It's in their bylaws now, but their annual report that they gave, they're not providing the detail for many of those entities. Actually, Delta Dental of Washington has a venture capital company called Spring Rock Ventures. Anyone can go online and look at their website. It's completely owned, as far as we can tell, by Delta Dental of Washington. In their most recent annual report, they said that they spent $1.2 million operating that venture capital fund. So those are, from the dollars that they collect from premium revenue every year. And they didn't provide any financial detail there. They just said that they spent $1.2 million. So they're required to provide detailed financials, and in other instances they haven't. So it's an ongoing effort and issue where dentists raise concerns, provide solutions for addressing those concerns, and they're either outright vetoed or not necessarily fully implemented.
One thing I would ask about is some dentists on Dentaltown, like when I posted this lawsuit on there, and by the way, so many dentists they're on Dentaltown. They're all encouraging to do this, all that. But some people ask some good questions. One says, but what's the difference between the ADA, Delta Dental, if the current executive director at the ADA formerly served as president and CEO of Dental Services of Massachusetts, Delta Dental of Massachusetts. The previous executive director, James Branson, went on to serve as United Concordia's chief dental officer. How, it's like dental insurance, organized dentistry. How do you juggle the conflicts of being for the provider versus the people selling the dental insurance? It's a revolving door. You see that in Washington, D.C., where people who serve in the Pentagon, then they go into other offices, then they go back to the Pentagon. How do you see the relationship between the ADA and these big dental insurance companies, or at the state level, the Washington Dental Association with your local Delta Dental of Washington? Does that question make any sense?
Yeah, I'll jump in here on that one. So I'll just assure you that at least at the Washington level, there's not a revolving door here. We are pretty squarely focused on minimizing third-party interference in the doctor-patient relationship at the WSDA level, and one very clear manifestation of that is this lawsuit that WSDA and Todd and Denny and another dentist of ours have filed against Washington Dental Service. With regards to that larger macro issue that you've identified, I would just go back to what I said earlier. The board of directors of the ADA has a fiduciary responsibility to find a executive that they feel is best positioned to succeed and take the organization forward. While I don't want to speak exactly to the details with the current executive situation, I will say that our relationship and communication with the ADA on dental benefits advocacy issues has generally been positive. They've been a partner with us on identifying solutions that state dental associations and other groups can partner on to move the agenda forward on improving laws and regulations, and to improve the minimize the interference of third-party carriers in the doctor-patient relationship. So I guess what I would say is that in any organization, it's not entirely driven by the chief executive. It's driven by many factors. And at the ADA level, it's the board of trustees, it's the House of Delegates, and all of its committees and other involvement. And there is a lot that is going forward to improve the doctor-patient relationship and to work on dental benefits advocacy. And in a few conversations that I've had with the current CEO of ADA, Dr. O'Loughlin, I think she's generally supportive of the ongoing advocacy efforts around that. So I don't know if that addresses your question, but really I think it's ultimately up to the boards to decide the right CEO. And there might be situations where having someone that has had dental benefits experience from the inside and understands it could be an asset and a benefit to the organization. So
I love her, and she's been on this show. I think she's a fine person. But I want to clear some things that I hear the young kids that are dentists that are still in dental school, or they've just been open for a year or two. They think Delta Dental is like McDonald's, where it's just one company. But Delta Dental is really a lot of different companies. Like Delta Dental of California owns Delta Dental of California, Texas, New York, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Pennsylvania, Florida. They're like the 400-pound gorilla. Is your Delta Dental of Washington just for the state of Washington?
Yes.
Yes, they are, but they have some large contracts that have influence across the country. The two largest they have are Boeing and Amazon. And so you can see that they'll have footprint larger than just our state. I think a good analogy that maybe would be helpful for how Delta works is, in a lot of ways, it's sort of like the NFL, where you can have the NFL franchise and logo almost be like the national Delta charter, and then different organizations sort of get territories and rights to different states. And so Delta of California, they mentioned, has more than just California. They have the rights in multiple states. For Washington, they just have Washington. I know our partner in the South, in Oregon, Moda Health, which used to be or is still Delta Dental of Oregon. They also have the Delta Dental of Alaska rights. So it just does vary. And our lawsuit is focused specifically on Delta Dental of Washington. And the governance rights have to stem from the fact that several decades ago, Washington Dental Service was created by dentists in Washington in affiliation with the Washington State Dental Association.
Yeah, the history is no doubt. So how many dentists are in the state of Washington? And of those, how many members are of the Washington State Dental Association or the Washington Dental Association?
Our market share of dentists is just about 70% of the state. We have 4,400 dentist members. So I'll let you do the math there. There isn't necessarily a hard and fast number of dentists in Washington. We know how many dental licenses there are, but not everyone practices in the state, even if they have a Washington license.
How many dental licenses are there?
It's somewhere between 6,500 and 7,000.
6,500 and 7,000. If I tell you the story, you're not even going to believe it. I was doing a partial adjustment on a 92-year-old man. Turns out he's a licensed dentist in Arizona. I mean, dentists retire here from all over, and a lot of them, it's an emotional thing. It's just hard to not renew your license someday. And there's dentists hanging on to them until they're 92 years old and wearing partials. Well, what kind of support are you having from your dental members, your 4,400 dental members? Are they cheering you on, or is it a controversy? What's your members think about all this?
The members are definitely behind this movement. We've had an uptick in membership and in support since we started down this road 2 years ago. The overall consensus, our governing board, the House of Delegates, gave us a green light to move forward and to pursue this thing to the very end. And we've had great support. The first special meeting we had, 2,600 dentists that showed up.
Holy moly.
Weekday, took off of work to be there to cast their vote for the amendment changes. And then the second special meeting we had over 1,000 members and proxies there. Both times we had over 90% support for the amendments that we submitted. So we've had a very, very strong support from our membership, and definitely encouraging us to move forward.
Wow, that might have been was that the biggest meeting you guys ever had? WSDA, 2,000 dentists?
Biggest since I've been involved.
Yeah.
Are you sure that wasn't a Nirvana concert?
Well, I remember this meeting, so I don't think I remember the Nirvana concert I went to. Anyway, so I wanted to circle back a little bit to something that you said that I thought was very interesting and appropriate with in relationship to the ADA being like mom and dad. I mean, there's like Denny said, we've had an uptick in membership since we took on this battle, and I'll give you a little example. I have a neighbor who, for years, just a dental neighbor, the dentist next door just wouldn't join the ADA and the Washington State Dental Association. And then as soon as we started doing this, and I think he didn't join because he said he didn't find any value in it. And as soon as we started this fight, he was a member, like that. And I feel like that's the reception we get with this. It's definitely got a lot of energy. It certainly is an emotional thing for people. I mean, if you work hard, Howard, if you work hard for those patients, you scratch and you do everything you can to get these people in your practice, and then you take care of them like they're your family. And then to have a dental benefit company come in and try and say, no, these are our patients, and you're gonna do what we tell you to do with them. It's very emotional, obviously. For those 10,000 or however many people are driving to work right now that are listening to what we're saying, and they're wondering if they should be a member of the ADA or not, or their state association, I will say that there is nobody else that loves you more and is looking out for you like your mom and dad than the ADA, because it's our only chance to organize. And if you don't take advantage of it, with 70% of our state, I mean, we're doing pretty good compared to most medical organizations. But how would it look if we had 85%? And we can't get that done without those young kids that are coming out, joining, and helping us with this fight. So,
hey, I always tell those young kids, I'll say, did your mom or dad cry at your graduation from dental school? I mean, I know my mom never bawling. And they say, yeah. I said, well, you know who made him cry? Organized dentistry. You lose organized dentistry, you're going to be some commodity molar mechanic. The people that are keeping it. By the way, how many people went to that WSDA meeting? You said
we don't know the exact number, and part of it is because the vote. We know how many votes were cast, but we don't know how many of those were in the room because of proxies.
How many votes were casted?
2,600, I think.
2,600. Well, you should make a meme. Top 4 concerts in Seattle, Washington. Number 1, Nirvana. 2, Pearl Jam. 3, Heart. And 4, the WSDA meeting.
That's there you go.
So that,
especially with dentist attendees, I bet we're high up there.
I forgot what?
You forgot
well, with dentist attendees in particular, we'd be way up there on the concert list.
Yeah, Washington's known for so many things. I mean, Boeing, Amazon, Starbucks, rock and roll. I mean, it's an amazing place. Do you guys kind of feel extra pressure that everybody's watching you, and whatever goes down right now with what you guys are doing could be a domino effect for deltas from coast to coast?
Well, we certainly hope that other states can find a way to chip away at their deltas, because when Delta exerts the type of influence that they do on the membership, I mean, we've had dentists that have complained to us that their patients have received letters from Delta telling them that they should look for another dentist who has a better working relationship with Delta Dental. That's wrong. That shouldn't happen. And that shouldn't happen in Washington State. It shouldn't happen in Arizona or any other state. That is just the type of thing that gives us the courage to go out and file this lawsuit and follow through with it to the end.
And I mean, when you said earlier, Todd, that, the people who love you is organized dentistry. I mean, look at your suppliers. You buy all your supplies from some big dental supplier. And what do? They give it the same supplies 20-30% cheaper to the big DSOs. And it's like, God, I thought you were my friend. You actually charge. And then dental insurance companies. A lot of these DSOs are spreading because when they buy your office, they negotiate a higher fee schedule with the DSOs, and they call that their uplift. So it's like, so I'm sitting here one-on-one, and my supply guy is giving all the DSOs a discount. Then I'm providing for a DSO insurance, a PPO insurance like Delta. And then if I'm bought by somebody who owns 100 offices, they're going to call them up and negotiate a higher reimbursement. I mean, who's fighting for the individual, the little guy, the private practice guy who just has one dentist in there?
Yeah, I think you're right. Organized dentistry is the only it's the last bastion of hope, so to speak, for the small business owner in dentistry. I think, but that's okay. I mean, like we had talked about following the rules. I mean, we know what corporations are about. We know that they are there to generate profit. But really what it comes down to is who is going to advocate for the patient. And we understand, I think, as dentists, that we're the only ones that are going to do that. Corporations are going to try and figure out how to get in people's pockets. That's how they're wired. That's what they do. And so when it comes down to who's going to take care of the patients, is it going to be Delta Dental? Is it going to be Shine Patterson or whatever? I mean, it is that relationship. And that is really the basis for why we're all here right now, why we're passionate about this. None of us volunteer dentists that put our name on this lawsuit, we're volunteers. We are a volunteer board that are putting the targets on our back and taking one for the team. So, and that's because we love our patients. That's what it boils down to.
But in all honesty, was that did you have kind of a pit in your stomach when you did this? I mean, when you sued a big boy like that, were you a little scared? Did that mess up some of your sleep?
Yeah.
I'll take this one. Go ahead, Danny, if you want it, but I'll tell you.
Stomach lining, sleep. Yeah. A few more gray hairs up here. All those things. It doesn't make you feel super comfortable.
Yeah, I mean that's people don't realize that, you climb up a telephone pole, that's who they throw all the arrows at. I mean, you guys climbed up a really tall telephone pole and you went after, it's kind of like David and Goliath, and I think you're the one with the slingshot.
Yeah. Here's the deal though, is and that's why you see, and we have one other dentist whose name is on there, and he's a little bit younger than we are. But we're on the back nine, so to speak, of our careers. I wouldn't expect someone at the beginning of their career to want to take on this fight. But that's why this organization is valuable. You've got a lot of experience, and you've got someone like Denny and I have been doing this for a long time. And you know what? What's the worst case scenario? They're already taking most of the profits out of this, and so it's like they can't hurt us that way, and we don't even. That's not why we're doing it anyway. So someone's got to jump on the grenade, so to speak. And so I think that's what we're doing.
Do you, Delta Dental of California, just let their CEO go? Does that have anything to do with, again, if you're a young kid and you're working, you graduated in dental school, you're working in dental office, you hear Delta Dental, there's so many different Delta Dentals, but Delta Dental of California CEO is the biggest one. And they just fired their CEO. Are you seeing the new CEO maybe having a different vision for the future, or is it same old?
I think for the California case, we don't know. I'll just say in Washington, there has been a turnover for our CEO as well. The long-term CEO of Washington, Delta Dental of Washington, Jim Dwyer, retired and has had a new person take over. Who actually, previous to working for Delta Dental, was a executive at Amazon.
You're talking about Mark Mitschke?
Yeah, and so I think the general consensus that we're hearing from people is that he is talking a talk that is more engaging and more collaborative with dentists. But I think we're all still waiting to see what actions will result of this. It was not lost on us that his name was on the letter that went out to all WDS members, in addition to the board that vetoed the latest round of bylaws amendments. So that is a pretty clear action that he's taken, that perhaps, or I would say, is contrary to the words that he said so far in his early tenure as CEO of Delta Dental of Washington.
So where are we at now, and what's the process moving forward, and what do you need your dentist in the state of Washington to do?
So, well, great question. We filed this lawsuit last month, and it's in the early stages. There's going to be multiple rounds of discussion, and we are preparing for this to go to court. And that's really about it. This is not something that will be over next week or next month. It is a longer process, and there will likely be periods of time where there aren't too many updates, just because there's action going on that sort of takes place in the standard course of action of litigation. So
Lawyers.
We will provide updates as they're available. I think a place that your listeners and watchers could go if they want to. We do have a page on the WSDA website that's wsda.org/delta, and we will be putting up information regarding this lawsuit and other activities as it becomes available. Say that again.
I'm at deltadentalwa.com.
Oh no, go to WSDA.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry.
Yep, WSDA.org/delta.
WSDA.org/delta.
Yep.
It took me to Delta Airlines Flight Center and make a reservation to Hawaii.
That's a good idea.
So there it is.
Yeah, we gotta fix that.
Dental benefits advocacy.
WSDA.org.
Okay.
www.wsda.org/delta.
Okay. And Dennis, you're the president-elect of the Washington State Dental Association?
Yes, I am.
So I'll just going to post right now that Dennis, can I post Dennis L. Bradshaw, DDS, president-elect Delta Dental, president-elect
WSDA.
Washington Dental Association or Washington State Dental Association?
Washington State Dental Association.
Okay, says go to WSDA.org membership
/delta.
Delta and do what? And
that's where you can get
updates.
That's where you can get updates on what's going on.
To get updates, okay. Very good. Because there's a big thread on Dental Town. By the way, everyone's just cheering you on Dental Town. They really think this is just the big, long, overdue fight. And like, say, if you're as old as I am, 31 years, I mean, gosh, Delta is a completely different beast than it was 31 years ago. I mean, I couldn't even tell if I was going to a Delta Dental meeting or an Arizona State Dental Association meeting. I mean, it was the same. All back then, when I got out of school, I was 25. All the 60-year-olds that were running the show were on both sides of the aisle there. And now it's gone apart significantly. And also I want to say something else. Back to dues. It really hacks me off when I'm paying for the other dentist sitting across the table from me, watching a Suns game, that he doesn't want to become a member because they always find something they don't like. And I'm like, yeah, you got 1,500 reasons why you can find one thing wrong with them so you don't pay. But I want to ask you, Dennis Bradshaw, as the president-elect of the Washington State Dental Association, how many volunteer hours have you spent in your career? I mean, were you paid $75 an hour for all these Washington State Dental Association meetings and conventions? And I mean, talk about your journey. They don't realize that their dues would probably be $5,000 a year if you guys were all getting paid an honest wage for all the time you spent volunteering.
It's a lot of hours, Howard. My wife would probably be a better one to ask how many hours it has been. But I will countless thousands. I've been on the board for 6 years. I've been an officer for a year now. Before that, I served 9 years, 10 years planning our big state dental meeting, our continuing education meetings. It's been going on a long time, but the reason why is kind of like what Todd said before. I was raised in a family that said you give back, you get involved, and that's how you make a difference in your world. And so that's, I get a lot out of it.
Well, that's amazing, but there's just so much volunteerism going on. I'm telling you kids that, after work, you want to drive home and pick up your daughter from daycare and go do something fun with her. There's other dentists who, after a long day at work, they're driving downtown to the Washington State Dental Association and having meetings. And some of these meetings drag on forever because when you get 5 dentists in the room, it's hard to get them to agree that today's Monday. I mean, if you want everybody to agree with you, you need to go be a captain in the Army where all your players are 18 to 25 years old. But when everybody's sitting around the table has 8 years of college, it takes a lot of time to get all those people on the same page.
Yep, it does. Some days more time than you can imagine.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes I've sat at some of those meetings and you just want to stand up and says, who cares? Who cares? Just make a damn decision and let's all go home. But they want to argue till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I always tease them. I say, you know why you argue so much? Because the stakes are so low. It's a statement on gum disease. Who cares? The patient doesn't even know what gum disease is. So basically, so we gave him a place to go. We gave him an action to go to WSDA.org / it's actually / member center / Delta.
Mm-hmm. Right. The Delta one will redirect to that as well.
Oh, okay. So you gave him the action site. Go ahead.
Howard, I was going to give a quick little shout out. You said when you were talking about all the different opinions at one of these meetings, the young guy sitting here on the call with us, Bracken, has it's like herding cats quite often, I'm sure, but he does a great job of keeping us focused. And so I just want to give you, Bracken, just a pat on the back for a lot of this energy, and where we are with this really has come from that guy's noggin right there. So
yeah, leadership at the top. We've got the best executive director in the country.
Well, it's definitely a team effort. We've got a good organization, good team, great board. We're doing great things.
Well, Bracken, my understanding of all my friends who are dentists and physicians and lawyers, they don't know anything about business. You went and got your MBA. I got my MBA in '98, and I didn't get any of that training in dental school. What was going on in your journey to get your MBA, and is this helping you right now in your lawsuit?
Well, I think I definitely didn't take any law classes in business school, but I think for me, it was a sort of a capstone in education for me. In undergrad, I mainly took political science classes and other things that I thought was interesting. And to kind of have that background in accounting and finance and economics, and there was several strategy classes I took as well, I think was a great way to sort of round it out. I think that there are, I know several dentists who've gotten MBAs or, taken sort of business classes, but, a lot of the fundamentals you can get without getting those letters behind your name. There's a lot of opportunities to do that. And some people just have it as a practical background that they just sort of understand how business works and some of the key financial, literacy that you need to have to sort of see how make a budget work and how to, sort of create efficiencies to get where you need to go.
I'm going to make another comment, and there's a question at the end of this, believe it or not, but I've lectured in 50 countries, and one of the neatest things I like to do, you can always see the Mormon missionaries because they're hard to miss. They're on bicycles, a white shirt and a tie, and they're bright-eyed, young, bushy-tailed, and I always stop to go to them because I'm lecturing this country, and I'm like, well, what? And I always ask them the same questions like, well, what do you think about this country? And more importantly, like, what do you think about its economic development compared to like where you're from in the United States? And to see these young minds try to summarize like, well, why is this country so poor? Why is it so backward? And when I got my MBA, I started seeing everything so differently. And the one thing that scares me is when about socialized medicine is you start hearing all the millennials talking about how healthcare should be free and it should be a right and all this stuff. But when you go to great civilizations that are advanced like Tokyo, Paris, London, and you try to wonder why implants are exploding, it's because their socialized medicine only pays $100 for a molar root canal in Tokyo, London, and Paris. So all the dentists are saying, well, my break even's about $300 or $400, so I can't lose $300. I have to extract the tooth and then do an implant because the implant is not covered by the insurance. So I can charge $1,500, and I'm sitting there saying, I don't know anything about oncology and cardiology and all the other providers in healthcare. And if you think insurance doesn't matter, then how would you like to have a molar toothache in Tokyo and you just assume you live in a great society with great cars and Yamaha and Honda, yet that doctor's pulling your molar because the insurance only is going to pay $100 and they have to go out of network? The point I'm trying to make is the details of dental insurance matter. It's like when I got to Arizona a long time ago, my first run-in with the Medicaid lady is I went down there with Jack Dillenberg to tell her that every time I worked this Medicare at this clinic, I would say, well, it's $45 to pull it and it's $50 to do the filling. And the mom would say, well, it's cheaper to pull it. I say, well, you can't have the extraction less than the damn filling because it's creating father, So I said, you have to make pulling it $1 more than saving it. And they're looking at me like, oh, do you think it even matters? I'm like, yeah, it absolutely matters. I'm on the front lines of doing this. So man, dental insurance, medical insurance, it really, really matters, and the devil is in the details. And the difference between a very rich country like Denmark, Sweden, Canada, Australia, and the United States versus 200 countries that are basically third world. I mean, there are some exact MBA answers to why they're living in poverty. And these answers are going to affect dental insurance, and it's going to come back and bite you. So you dentists need to be members of organized dentistry, and the devil is in the details. And I'm just so proud of you guys for fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing to that, Howard? Is I think it's important for people to understand that dental is not really insurance. There isn't sort of anticipated loss. There isn't catastrophic loss like there is in medical. My brother had a catastrophic medical accident, several years ago, and he had insurance and was able to get the care that he needed and is back today at full strength. And there is no such thing as that in dental. They really don't have to plan for loss in dental like you do in medical. And part of the reason we know that is because they almost have it down to a formula of how much money they're going to spend on dental claims based on the premium that they bring in. It's almost like two lines, if you were to look at it over time, that are just exactly parallel. And that tells us that there really isn't risk into this. They know how much they're going to pay on a macro level. They sort of rig the system to get that profit out, and it's a prepaid dental benefit. So you hit on some very good points there, and insurance is not what Delta Dental is. It's a prepaid dental benefit that you're right to say studies show that people, and practical experience shows that people are more likely to go to the dentist if they have a benefit. And that's sort of the conundrum that we're in, is that the benefits carriers have made a way to sort of maximize and get the profit that they want out of it, and then they just sort of dial the issues off when they do it. So that's the last thing I'd say about the whole thing.
Well, I just want to tell you, I just am so honored. You guys are so busy. It's on a Monday. Y'all had 10,000 other things you'd rather be doing. It was just a huge honor for you guys to come on the show. I cannot wait to post this podcast online, especially on the message boards where everybody's discussing it. Again, I know you're busy. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your life and coming on the show to talk to dentists today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Howard.
Howard.